Hello and welcome to Sim.pc, where it right now is 11:43, and you might ask, I already get you, right? I'm in advance, right, in me thinking, why are you recording in the middle of the day if you have to upload them for like 12 hours every night? Well, or every day actually. Well, if I have the answer for you, mates. Today I'm going to have access to a place with better internet. Hallelujah. I know it's gonna be the best thing ever. So tomorrow probably gonna have it at around the same time because, well, I'm having access to the internet for like 2 days. I gotta use that, right? Gotta utilize it. Started on the scripts as well. Having a bit of a good time utilizing internet when it's not slow, so I actually can work in a decent pace and actually get stuff done. So that's why it is 11:43 today, just around noon. But that is not why you're here today, now is it? No, you're here today because we're going to deliver on that serve that we slang up, we showed up yesterday. Sorry mates, it's me English, right? We swung up yesterday. Today we're gonna smash it right into the ground. We're gonna talk about what the serve was all about. So just gonna move myself around here. So if we just recap what we did yesterday on the serve, so to say, we went through gambling. Well, which type? Well, I'm gonna just read through that again. The activity or practice of playing at a game of chance for money or other stakes. Another kind of definition that we also used that I didn't think we were going to use, but it's the same definition of the same word, or another definition of the same word, is the act or practice of risking the loss of something important by taking a chance or acting recklessly. Now, gambling stands for more than, and this is another fact, gambling generates more revenue than movies, spectator sports, theme parks, cruise ships, and record music combined. The latest thing that we also discussed was no wonder there are so many gambling commercials. Well, that is because they're making so much damn money all the time. My opinion on gambling overall is bad, so just keep that in mind as we're moving forward in this video. And what's my opinion about it being legalized? Well, it's a good thing because you could get help if something goes wrong. Basically saying that, well, it's better that it's actually legalized than that it's illegal. Well, we're discussing that in yesterday's video. But that was all about the smash. It was just creating some context to gambling, my opinions, what it actually is. Because today, mates, we're going to go into what I actually think about gambling, what the thing is that we're going to discuss about gambling. What are we going to discuss? Well, we're going to discuss kids, because isn't that what everybody likes to do? They like to discuss these little humans, right? These little people that lives in our society just like regular humans, but they're smaller, right? And they're very impressionist, right? Because they're like sponges. They just suck up everything we tell them, everything we show them, just suck it up like little sponges, right? And then they work with that. So today we're going to discuss if gambling is good or bad in relation to children, or what is actually gambling in consideration to children, because of in all of the commercials that I view, which is a lot now that I'm at my parents' place at the break, and I'm viewing lots of these different commercials now that I'm at my parents' place because, well, that's social, so to say. Anyway, and I'm seeing that all the time. It says that you need to be 18 years or older, right? You need to be 18 years or older. Basically, that's saying you need to be able to think about your decisions, otherwise you're not allowed to gamble. But is that strictly true? Because even though gambling sites that are gambling with, you know, money, you're putting in money to win more money, basically, right? Casinos and poker and stuff like that, that has a certain age restriction of 18. However, in one article that I read a couple of days ago, it said that, or it's rather stated that, smartphones are getting handed out to younger and younger generations, right? Younger and younger people, children are having access to smartphones. And what are smartphones? Well, they're basically a phone with a computer inside. They can access the internet, they can access apps, they can access, well, the full web. And is there an age restriction on the website? Yeah, probably, but if there is, it's just something that you can click in that, am I above 18? You click yes, and well, you're in. That's basically it, right? That's basically the security. So already there, children can get their hands on gambling devices, let's say. Not gambling in itself, because they can't actually be involved in the gambling on the sites, because then they need a credit card. Sure, they can take their parents' credit cards, but that's not what I'm getting into. But they can actually, what I'm getting into is that they are actually exposed to these types of industries, or that they can be exposed, and that there isn't kind of a good enough security system in place actually restricting children from accessing this information. As I said, children are like sponges. They just grab all the things that we show them and that they can observe, and they just take it in, right? So then it has also been quite a vivid discussion, especially late last year, 2017, about loot boxes in gaming, because this is a part of, what you would say, gambling in itself, where children can access gambling. And what do I mean with that? Well, basically moving up or introducing the idea of loot boxes is that loot boxes is something that you buy in a game because, well, for real life money or in-game currency, but generally there is some incentive to you to actually spend more money on the loot boxes, and then there is a specific chance of you getting something. However, these chances aren't always stated, they are not explicitly told, and this can, you know, end up in people just throwing money at the game, which is arguably no problem if you have a steady income and you have no financial insecurity. You actually have a financial security, and you have no problem spending a bit of extra bucks on a TV, like on a game. However, the problem becomes when younger people get access to loot boxes and they get introduced to this way of, well, if you spend money, you can get something that gets you ahead in the game. Introducing this idea of gambling, yet again, risking something for the reward, something that is important to you and you're spending money to do so, yet again, involved in this bit of risk. And as we discussed in yesterday's video, gambling addiction is a clear thing, right? Gambling addiction is a thing, it is a condition, and the earlier people are getting involved with any sort of gambling, really, it increases the odds of them getting a gambling addiction in the future, especially if you introduce it at such a low age with loot boxes. Then that people are like, they're just playing a game, they're just having fun, they're connecting fun with loot boxes, and loot boxes are later connected with gambling, maybe not by the children themselves, but the behavior of the loot boxes are quite similar to the behaviors of casinos. You're putting in something in the hopes of being rewarded with something greater. Now also there's been this huge controversy about loot boxes. Governments has gone in and said we're gonna ban them. Other governments have said, well, we won't. Some YouTube creators have said that this is the worst thing that has happened ever. Some people just say that it's good and that it should continue happening. If we take an example then, the company of EA, Electronic Arts, they had the monopoly, so to say, on releasing Star Wars games, and they released Battlefront 2 that I am sure that you all heard of, because it is a notorious example when it comes to loot boxes. Well, basically what they did, and I'm not going to give you the full thing because that's probably a 60-minute video to be, like, at the least. Basically what they did was that they implemented loot boxes in the game, and you had to play basically 40 hours in order to be rewarded a loot box by in-game means. However, you could spend your real-life cash at loot boxes that apparently was ludicrously expensive in comparison to the in-game time or the in-game effort put towards actually gaining a loot box in-game, which meant that they really incentivized you to both buy the game for the full amount and the full price, and then also buy loot boxes inside of the game. Now, most people didn't like this because, well, they felt cheated, and this was mostly grown-ups that I viewed giving reviews on the product. But I also saw some interesting discussing saying, well, if you're kind of incentivized not to play the game in order to get the rewards, and you're incentivized to actually pay money to get the rewards, and even when you pay money, you don't pay money for a specific reward, you pay money in order for a chance of getting a reward that you want, basically the loot boxes system. That is a bit of a problem, especially, as I said, when it incentivizes you to pay rather than play. Because loot boxes are in other games as well. For instance, in Overwatch it was implemented, and in Hearthstone it was implemented. Both games of the same company, Blizzard Entertainment. As people already know on this channel, I kind of like Blizzard Entertainment, and I think that they implemented it in a good way. However, when they did, and Overwatch and Hearthstone respectively became so popular and so big, there were already the discussion about, well, shouldn't we give out explicit numbers about what the chances of actually getting one of the different types of rarities in cards, different rarities of skins in Overwatch and Hearthstone respectively. However, with Battlefront 2, this question was raised yet again and brought with it lots of controversy. Now, what I'm mainly concerned with here is the idea that kids are getting exposed to this type of medium, this type of gaming mentality where it says spend money on the game and we'll give you stuff, instead of play the game and you'll gain stuff when you've already bought the game. And I know that some people are gonna say, well, what about League of Legends, what about Dota? Those are free to play games where you're actually spending a ludicrous amount of money on skins instead. Same with Heroes of the Storm, I believe, also produced by Blizzard, by the way. Yeah, that is true, but that is a free to play game, and you can actually, even though it takes a long time to meet these requirements of buying different skins and stuff in-game, they are doable. However, this is a free-to-play game, so you actually haven't spent any money on the product, so that is how they make their money. That's their financial business plan. You paying for skins and cosmetics, and that is it. However, when you're buying in these games, you're buying a specific item, hence you're not gambling. You're spending cash and you're getting a reward. The problem is, yet again, with loot boxes. That is the core issue here, because it's introducing this mentality and this idea of I'm spending money and I'm getting a potentially higher reward, but I can also get screwed and not get anything good. That was quite a lot of time spent on loot boxes. But where does all of this come from? Where does this mentality come from? Because many people will say, well, if loot boxes are this bad, where did they come from? They obviously make money, so why shouldn't they stay? Well, basically what I'm saying is that there is, of course, a huge potential profit to be made here by companies, because there are so-called whales who go in and buy the game, and then they spend a lot of money on cosmetics and loot boxes and whatever and whatnot, and basically having loot boxes not giving them what they want directly forces them to spend more money, and they're already going to spend a lot more money, so that's not an issue. However, I would say that since kids, right, we're going to conclude this by introducing or getting back to the idea that they're getting smartphones in younger ages, since they're having mobile gaming, which also tend to have a free-to-play strategy or a free-to-play model where loot boxes are included, you get introduced to loot boxes by that idea, that mentality of, well, I'm playing a game on my phone, and gaming on phones have been way more prominent than I thought it would ever be. People are actually using that as their one medium to play games. And why am I discussing gaming and not, going to a casino? Well, yet again, because we're discussing kids. So kids are playing on their phones, and they're, there is a type of stigma regarding the games on a phone, because it's generally free to play. People are generally not buying stuff from it, even though there are people who are throwing ludicrous amounts of money even at mobile games, myself included. I have been there at times, but I feel like I'm having a restriction on it. But just believe you're a kid, you're seeing, well, it takes me 8 hours to do this, I can speed it up by paying something. Well, that's all fine and dandy. Well, it isn't, but in this case it's going to be, because we're discussing gambling. However, when it says you can speed this process up by spending money on it, and it will potentially speed it up. It can speed it up completely, or you can speed it up halfway, it can not speed it up at all. So you're introducing this idea of gambling into it. That's basically a loot box when it comes to reducing time in the game. But that already has the stigma, right? The mobile game is the mobile industry. It's a new semi-ish new industry that is not as experienced as the console gaming industry or the computer gaming industry. But when you move from the mobile games to games on a console, and you're still this kid and you're thinking like, oh, people have told me that this is bad, gaming on a phone, because it's mainly free to play, but now I bought this game, Shadow of War for instance, I'm implementing it, I'm sitting here playing, and I'm just like, this is a single player game, but it's still loot boxes in the game. Well, that's a bit of a problem, because now I'm spending money not to get an incentive or a better edge on other players in the world, which is ludicrously bad by itself, in my opinion. Should only be cosmetics in multiplayer games. But I'm playing a single player game, but still some of the content is kind of locked off, or it takes a ludicrously long amount of time in order to access it, so I'm incentivized yet again to pay money in it. So in order to conclude, kids are like sponges. They just take all that they can get, right? They're getting introduced to all of this new information, all of these new concepts, and they suck it all in and they stay with them. So since smartphones are being handed out to lower and lower ages, people are getting access to websites where there are normal betting sites. Of course, they can't bet here, but they can read about betting if they so choose to want to. And the online security isn't that good because it generally is, are you over 18? They can easily say yes, and they're let into the market, so to say, getting access to the information so that they can get an understanding of it. Now, them getting an understanding of it, that's arguably not a bad thing. That arguably could be a good thing because they can understand what they're actually getting into. However, when we're mixing that information that they're getting before they have time on reflecting on it to them jumping over and playing a mobile game that's free to play, that has the stigma of it, and they're seeing that, oh, I can spend money here. So maybe they're implementing that mentality that, oh, I can spend money and I can potentially get greater profits, and they start doing that in the mobile game. Then when they're moving to a console game, they see the same thing, even in a single player game at times, such as Shadow of Mordor, or when they're moving over to a multiplayer game such as Hearthstone, Overwatch, Battlefront 2, etc., etc. And they're seeing this keep-on mentality of, well, there's loot boxes, I can just pay cash and I don't have to do this, and I potentially get something very good. And then you move over to the real world where you have a substantial income, you're now a grown-up, and, well, you're actually having a bit of a gambling addiction, even though it's not probably seen as a gambling addiction because you're only doing it in games. But now you're seeing, oh, this is all these websites that I read about when I was younger and that I implemented. This worked kind of well because it's just a game, so the consequences in a game, even though I lost some money, isn't that great. But now I'm going to spend some money here and start gambling for real. Now the problem is that that's easily getting out of hand, and what I'm trying to say here is that since we're introducing gambling so excessively and so easily accessible and so excessively to younger kids, and to younger people overall, that might lead to an increased percentage of the population being struck by gaming addiction in the future, since this mentality is going to be carried over to when they're older. I hope that I touched upon some of the perspectives that I deem to be the most important. I hope that you too see it that way, and if you do not, then just please enlighten me in the comments of why you think that a certain perspective was left out and why it's important, or why one of my perspectives that I kind of discussed wasn't important at all, and why you think that this isn't important. Yeah, thank you all for watching, mates. Leave a like if you enjoyed this one, subscribe and all of that, and I'll see you tomorrow, mates, with a new concept video, right? A new concept of video that I'm quite enjoying, so we can see how that turns out. So yeah, see you, mates, and have a nice one.